Rasa, Spasha, Shabda, Rupa, Gunanvitaha. Word for word, please repeat. Navasaha, of the sky. Ata, thus. Vikurvanat, being transformed. Abut, generated. Sparsha, touch. Gunaha, quality. Anilaha, air. Para, previous. Anvayat, by succession. Shabdavan, full of sound. Cha, also. Pranaha, life. Ojaha, sense perception. Sahaha, fat. Balam, strength. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Because the sky is transformed, the air is generated with the quality of touch. And by previous succession, the air is also full of sound and the basic principles of duration of life, sense perception, mental power, and bodily strength. When the air is transformed in course of time and nature's course, fire is generated, taking shape with the sense of touch and sound. Since fire is also transformed, there is a manifestation of water, full of juice and taste. As previously, it also has form and touch and is also full of sound. And water, being transformed from all variegatedness on earth, appears odorous, and as previously becomes qualitatively full of juice, touch, sound, and form respectively. The odour is a bit strong. Is that incense still burning?
Yes.
Yeah, just tip it upside down. Thank you. The whole process of creation is an act of gradual evolution and development from one element to another, reaching up to the variegatedness of the earth, as so many trees, plants, mountains, rivers, reptiles, birds, animals, and varieties of human beings. The quality of sense perception is also evolutionary, namely generated from sound, then touch, and from touch to form. Taste and odour are also generated along with the gradual development of sky, air, fire, water, and earth. They are all mutually the cause and effect of one another, but the original cause is the Lord Himself in plenary portion, as Mahavishnu lying in the causal water of the Mahatattva. As such, Lord Krishna is described in the Brahma Samhita as the cause of all causes, and this is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 10.8 as follows. Aham savasya prabhavo matasavam pravatate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. The qualities of sense perception are fully represented in the earth, and they are manifested in other elements to a lesser extent. In the sky there is sound only, whereas in the air there is sound and touch. In the fire there are sound, touch and shape. And in the water there is taste also, along with the other perceptions, namely sound, touch and shape. In the earth, however, there are all the above-mentioned qualities with an extra development of odour also. Therefore, on the earth there is a full display of variegatedness of life, which is originally started with the basic principle of air. Diseases of the body take place due to derangement of air within the earthly body of the living beings. Mental diseases result from special derangement of the air within the body, and as such, yogic exercise is especially beneficial to keep the air in order, so that diseases of the body become almost nil by such exercises. When they are properly done, the duration of life also increases, and one can have control over death also by such practices. A perfect yogi can have command over death and quit the body at the right moment when he is competent to transfer himself to a suitable planet. The bhakti yogi, however, surpasses all the yogis because by dint of his devotional service he is promoted to the region beyond the material sky and is placed in one of the planets in the spiritual sky by the supreme will of the Lord, the controller of everything. Omigyan timarantasya gananjana shalakaya chakshushun militam jena tasmai shri gurave namaha vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhuvayavacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. It's simple subject matter. Earth, water, fire, air and ether. Simple for those people who have been used to dealing with those things. We get used to night and day, hot and cold, happy and distressed, the different seasons, but they're pretty vague because our awareness is of higher things. What's on the television? What's the rate of such and such dollars on the exchange? Who's going to be the most successful, attractive superstar in the future? We get distracted by nonsense. Whereas people who were living simply in bygone ages, earth, water, fire, air, ether, they were very present. We were camping, I was with Maharaj on the bus. We were up at, I think, Townsville. And we used to go for walks along the shore, chanting our rounds. So one morning we found an almost extinct fire, and there was an Aboriginal man asleep next to it. So as we came close, he woke up with a shock, ready to have a go at us, but then realised we were peaceful people and settled down, and we started talking about fire. His fire, the element fire, respect for fire, relationship with fire, knowledge of fire, awareness of fire. It's common knowledge. It's your everyday experience when you're living in a much more simple, connected with nature style of life. So the sages, living in nature, they used to spend a lot of time in the forests. Once at New Gokul, one of the Swamis came down and took us for a walk into the forest, and we sat amongst the roots and the rocks and the ferns and the creek, and we just discussed elevated topics about the nature of the universe and the nature of the self. And the background setting was very conducive for meditation, for hearing, for purity of thought, compared to nowadays where there's so much pollution. Srila Prabhupada, he describes one of the main sources of pollution, and it's very visible, very tangible in the cities, is all of the lies which are transmitted up into the ether. All the lies of all of these lawyers, politicians, corrupt business people, everybody. It's just the atmosphere is dense, thick with all of these lies. Or getting away from those places, you get out of the city and you start to breathe and you just start feeling relief from the lack of that pollution and the clarity of the environment. So these elements, they were very, very tangible, very understood, dealt with. There's still sayings, from dust we came and to dust we will go. Understanding the final destination of this lump of matter. It will return to the earth. So when we hear from the Srimad Bhagavatam, this chapter here is entitled The Cause of All Causes. There were two great sages, Lord Brahma and Narada Muni, just asking simple questions. And this is the first question that one should ask. And it forms the background for all of the great discussions on life, where I've come from, where am I going? Creation. How did it all get here? Who am I? What am I doing? Where am I going? Why am I suffering? This is primary questions, and even considered to be the beginning of the human form of life. Human form of life begins when we start to ask these questions. If we don't ask those questions, then basically we're still on the animal platform, living the royal life of a polished cat or a dog. So human means questioning. Everybody's questioning, but questioning significant questions about that can be answered. So this structure of creation, this mechanism of creation, Prabhupada, I've studied this before quite extensively with the devotees who go into these topics because it's relishable. Sometimes we just want to jump to the real nectar. We want to go to the topmost pastimes of Krishna, the times or the stories where he's involved in romantic dalliances with all of his girlfriends, millions of them. The rasa dance, which is considered the topmost intimate nectar pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with all of his parts and parcels. But these pastimes of creation, for somebody who is even slightly self-realized and slightly concerned about who they are and where they're going, are as relishable. They're as relishable. They're as tasty. The sense which is being inspired is not necessarily the sense of seeing, or it's the intelligence which is being inspired. Of course, we get connected with all of these different things, the different, they're called tanmatras. I think that was spoken about, or it was Prabhupada was speaking about it yesterday, tanmatras. The subtle essences of things: earth, water, fire, air, and ether, sky. The subtle essences. So here we are at creation. The cause of all causes is the title of the chapter. And Prabhupada, bang in the middle of the purport, he reminds us that Krishna, he is the cause of all causes. In this study guide, there's a clear tabular display of everything that was described here. Who's the original cause, what he breaks, what are the expansions from him, how they expand into further expansions, how they further expansions, and then at the juncture of the material and the spiritual worlds, the crossover, the link between matter and spirit. There is another clear description of what connects the two. Can anybody remember from previous studies or from what was discussed in the last couple of days, what is the connection between the material situation we're in and the spiritual situation where we belong?
Srimad Bhagavatam states that we're actually what we're suffering from is the material conception of life. Is that what you're...
Yeah. What's that called in one word? Chitta? Huh? Sorry, what was it? Nescience? That's the material. What's the link between the material and the spiritual?
False ego?
False ego. Ahankara. Ahankara. The false ego, the false conception, we're bewildered by the false material conception, false ego. But as Giri Hariprabhu was saying, it's a thing, a fancy term. You have to get rid of ego. You have to become desireless. No. Ego is real. But the false conception that I am matter is what needs to be purified. At the point between the material, the spiritual and the material, the false ego is developed. There's three different types of broad categories of false ego. False ego in the mode of goodness, false ego in the mode of passion, false ego in the mode of ignorance. The false ego in the mode of ignorance is the source of matter. Basically, and the whole conception we're talking about here, it's called the process of evolution. It's another wonderful subject matter which people are dallying, playing around with. Evolution. Where have we come from? What's the source? We're all descended from monkeys. We came from a space rocket up in another universe and it descended down here and where have we come from? What's our source? So, I think one of the speakers recently, he was describing that it's quite complicated and quite technical. It's described in technical language because it's a technical subject, but the actual understanding is very simple. Like the difference between matter and spirit. What's the difference between matter and spirit? One word for matter, one word for spirit. In Sanskrit it's sat and asat. But in English, what is spirit? What is the nature of spirit? Active. Eternal. Eternal. And so what's matter in contrast to eternal? Temporary. Temporary. Eternal and temporary. Spirit and matter. Spirit is eternal, matter is temporary. We're spirit and we're stuck in this material environment so that we think that things are temporary. But it's not a fact. It's not a fact. So spirit is the original cause. Life comes from life. That spark of life is the original source of the variegatedness. And the way that it comes down is through a very reasonable system that Krishna, in one of his expansions as Karanadakshaya Vishnu, he dreams, and as he's dreaming, he's breathing in and out, dreaming, yoga nidra. He's in mystic slumber. As he's breathing out, then universes come out from the pores of his skin. That's pretty understandable. Things get generated from the body. But when you're talking about the Supreme Personality of God, or the Supreme Lord, what comes out from his body is universes. Just like we can bring it back to ourselves, microcosm, macrocosm. We're spirit, and which is eternal, and the body is temporary, matter. So the matter is staying together because of the spirit. When the soul leaves the body, then the body disintegrates. From ashes we came, back to ashes we go. So that's on the microcosm. The same thing on the macrocosm. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, he expands down as the Karanadakshaya Vishnu. Then the super soul is the source of these other creations. Krishna, he doesn't have to do anything. He's playing his flute. He's engaged in relationships with all of his parts and parcels. He doesn't have to do anything. But everything is taking place by his expansions, his representatives, his managers. So they make all of these arrangements. The super soul, again, soul, spirit, the subtle aspect of the super soul is, what did I write down? The aspect of the super soul is the universal form, the subtle, and the gross manifestation of the super soul is the universe. Everything's created from something. Nothing just pops out of nowhere. So in order for the universe to manifest, there has to be a design, an arrangement, a template by which it can manifest. So that's the subtle, that's the intelligence, the creative aspect of the super soul. And his creation is the universe. Soul, super soul, and the creation. It's described in technical terms, different types of energy. There's the Dravya Shakti, the Jnana Shakti, and the Kriya Shakti. Dravya is gross earth type of energy. The Kriya is the passion, the active, and the Jnana Shakti is more the subtle, the intelligence. When you want to get out of the universe, if you want to practice the yogic path, then you have to penetrate through the coverings of the universe. The universe is like a big egg, and then surrounding there are layers of earth, water, fire, air and ether. Each one 10 times thicker than the previous one. This is not like this type of, it's the potency of energy. It's a different, but it's thick. It's a covering. You have to penetrate through those coverings. So likewise, the yogi, when they want to give up the body, they have to merge those coverings of the soul back into themselves. So the gross evolution develops from the subtle to the gross. From sound is the original. In the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was God. So in the beginning is sound. From sound, from the what would you call that? That's the element, sound. From sound comes the element, ether, sky. Sky becomes transformed, and from sky, transformed not on its own, it's not just sitting there and suddenly wants to grow a leg or an arm. Sound, with the combination of eternal time and there's another element that was described before. You add those things, that comes from the Supreme Personality of God, the original element. It's combined with time, and then sound transformed into ether. Ether becomes the next, which is air. No, it becomes touch. Touch. That subtle touch is, you can't see ether. You can't, it's ether, vacuum. How do we know that ether exists? No, air is the next one. Ether is more subtle than air. Ether is what the sound waves are transmitted through. The television, the radio waves, they travel through ether. It's a substance. Then air. Again, we can't see air. How do we experience air? Feeling, touch. Yeah, the hairs on the body, they move. That's the sensation of the movement of air. Wind, more violent air. So, touch, ether, the subtle element, which has sound as its source, transforms into touch, which has sound and touch in it, and that becomes, its solid element becomes air. Air, with the combination of eternal time, and gets transformed into the next earth, water, fire, air, the other way around. What's after air? Fire. Fire. So the air gets transformed into the experience of fire. How do we identify fire? Light and heat. You can feel, so the feel is the touch, but you can see. Without fire, we can't see. Without light, without sun, without the moon, we can't see. So the perception, the sensory perception, is dependent upon that element, fire. Then we can see. Form. So within fire, there's sound, touch and form. Then fire is transformed by the addition of those previous elements and time into the next one down. What's below fire? Water. Okay, and what is water characterized by? Taste. The taste of water. Rasoham apsukointaya. Krishna says, I'm the taste of water. Water, tasty water. There's salty water. That's not a nice taste. It's water plus something else added to it. But the taste is the water, the juice. If things get dried up, then they're not juicy anymore. If we dry up, we become a prune, then we're not very fluid. We're not very interesting. Dried up. Then taste. The taste, so it's the experience, the sensory perception which comes first, then the element in order to manifest, and then on top of that, then there are the senses themselves. So Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes that there's the gross body, higher than the body is the senses, higher than the senses are the mind, higher than the mind is the intelligence, and above that is the consciousness. So higher than the body is the senses. If you think you've got a body, or if you have been told, or you're working on the fact that I've got a body, the thing that you need to work on is that the body has senses. It's the senses which are a critical part of the body. Because if you don't have senses, then you might as well be a worm or something else. You've still got a body, but you don't have that ability to perceive. The sensory perception is not part of your what do they say with a computer? You've got certain facilities, certain abilities, programs. Yeah, you don't. It's not in your hardware. You can't, if you don't have senses that are functioning properly, then you don't experience. You don't experience properly. The senses, and then we'll just keep going. The next one down from water. Water gets transformed. Again, water is the element. It's transformed by addition into the last, the most gross type of sensory perception. And what's that? The heaviest. But what's the sensory perception related to earth? Odour, aroma. When it's raining, or when it's just started raining, you walk around the forest, and the odour is very powerful. The lemon-scented gums, the different things which are growing here. That's the fragrance of the earth. So the earth has that. Water doesn't carry that. But earth has odour, taste, form, touch, and the first one, sound. So they develop from subtle to gross. And then the different elements. So Prabhupada then, after explaining that, it's quite a weighty topic to explain that, then he talks about air. And it's clear in the purport too, that the air is also full of sound and the basic principle of duration of life. Sense perception, mental power and bodily strength. That constitutes life. If you don't have sense perception, mental power and bodily strength, then you're not alive. So that comes from the air. That comes from the air. And there's a science which is called the Ayurveda. How to prolong life, how to deal with life, how to improve the quality of life. And Ayurveda describes that the bodily ailments are caused by imbalance of the airs. Derangement is the way it's described in Prabhupada's purport. And the mental illnesses, they are a special derangement of the airs. The airs are going the wrong way. Too much air, not enough air. In childbirth, that's one of the airs required. A particular air is involved in forcing the child out of the womb. So if that's not strong enough, if the child is not properly situated, then there's problems. Breathing. If you don't get enough oxygen to your brain, then the brain starts malfunctioning. You get little electric shocks up there. There's not enough of something. So the airs are deranged. So the Ayurveda, if you have a digestive problem, they work upon raising the fire of digestion. If you have other problems from the derangements of airs, there's other exercises, yogic exercises, which will help to pacify the life airs, to calm them down. It's said that you have mastered an asana, a yogic asana, when you can hold that one asana for 2 hours and 45 minutes. And you'll only be able to do that when the airs are balanced and purified, because you want to get out of there because there's some disturbance of the airs. I'm not comfortable, I'm not settled. Oh, it's pain, I have to move. But if the airs are settled and balanced and stable, then the yogic exercise, you've mastered that asana. And by practicing those exercises, then the disease should not be visible in the body. The yogic process is very effective when you have a long time to practice it. And you can go and sit and meditate for many, many years. In order to meditate, you have to purify and live simply. So it's difficult to practice. But even nowadays, there's the saying, if you have a healthy mind, you have a healthy body. Healthy body, healthy mind. So it's helpful to enable you to use the facilities that you've got to see what's going on. If you can't see, if the sensors are not working, it's like driving along in a car and the windscreen's covered with mud. It's dangerous. It's very risky. So you have to be able to see. You have to have access to purified senses. So the yogic exercises, they're supposed to purify those things. And ultimately, purification, we're talking about purification. Purification means removing contamination. Matter and spirit. The spirit is originally pure. Described to be like a drop of water which falls down, pure water falls down, it hits the ground and it takes on contamination. It gets muddy. Dirt and odour and also. So when that originally pure drop of water is allowed to settle, then its original pristine pure quality will manifest again. So in order for us to regain our original spiritual identity, we need to remove the contamination. We need to purify the airs. We need to purify our concept of who we are. That's why Bhakti Yogi, it's described at the end of the Bhakti Yogi, he doesn't worry about all these processes. He surpasses all yogis by dint of his devotional service. He is promoted to the region beyond the material sky and is placed in one of the planets in the spiritual sky by the supreme will of the Lord, the control of everything. He gets access to the one switch which will unlock all of the secrets of life, which will open access to that other region. He's changed his focus, the Bhakti Yogi. Just like if you're looking through a camera or you're searching on the radio for a particular program, unless you're right on, there's static or it's blurry. You're not seeing clearly. So when you just adjust your focus It's like turning on a switch. You're in the darkness, you turn on the switch, there's light. And instantly, it's all clear. That's who I am, that's where I'm going, that's what it's all about. So the bhakti yogi, they can see where they're going, and ultimately, by engaging in their proper existential, natural, constitutional position as a spirit soul, not as a entity contaminated by all of these coverings, you can very quickly get out of here and return to that realm where eternality, knowledge and bliss are just the stock standard material. Here we're in a realm which is temporary, which is full of misery and is characterized by ignorance. So it's pretty simple. So it's all of it's helpful to understand what it is that's holding us back. This Upanishad describes we need to study science and nescience side by side. We need to see where we're going and why we're not getting there very fast. What's holding us back? It's okay to be gung-ho, yeah, I'm on the path, I'm going, I'm on my way back, but then suddenly, as is natural, you fall off the path. You're on the top of a wave, you're surfing, it's all ecstatic, but then you fall off. Life is like that, troughs and crests. So how to stay fixed? You have to be able to be confident, full of knowledge, and seeing the scientific thread which is connecting everything in our existence. So Ayurveda, physics, chemistry, literature, all of these subjects are very perfectly described in these transcendental literatures. We just need to avail ourselves of them and of those devotees who have become realized in these texts in order to achieve success in life. Otherwise, there's plenty of other bodies, plenty of other forms which we can prepare ourselves for. Does anybody have any questions or any comments? Earth, water, fire, air and ether was basically what was the subject described here. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, how they expand, what are their subtle perceptions, and then the cause of all causes. He was in the background, how we can get back to the cause of all causes, and being confident in who we are, our sense of identity. The false ego is what keeps us bound up in matter. I'm good, I'm proud, I'm strong. But then that's being dismantled by the nature of the material energy. It's not our proper home. We're supposed to be getting out of here. And the material energy, it's not something to be rejected. We should be frightened. We should be frightened of the influence of the material energy, but when if you're walking along and you fall over, you'll fall on the ground. You have to push on that very same ground in order to get back up and keep moving. The material energy, the material nature, all of this thing is provided by Krishna in order to help us on our journey to the ultimate destination. Take a breath. Sadhana.
I was asked a question. Thank you. It was very Hare Krishna.
You have to flick it sideways.
Hare Krishna. I'm doing something. I'm going left and I'm going right. Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol. On the right one. So my question is, you spoke about the yogis and how they can sit and meditate and internally they're very balanced, I guess, because of all the balance of life. So some devotees find they can't sit and some devotees have to walk to chant. And I guess my question is it too much to endeavour to try and get that balance in life?
Yogis can sit and they can meditate, but some devotees, they need to walk in order to chant. The sitting is not their preferred asana. There's millions of asanas. There's millions of things which you can. There's different adjustments, different versions you can do. There's the up dog, down dog. I've got a broken back, so I do it standing up and holding on and stretching. You can get the principle of yoga is what we're trying to achieve, the purification, the removal of the blockages. And if there's damage or if it's not, then you have to apply the yogic principle in a certain way. We used to be able to walk from farm to farm with 50 kilograms worth of under our arms, stepping over the fence posts, and now and then after a while we have to hitchhike, and then eventually we got a car. But we can still achieve the same principle. We can go and meet people at their doors. So it's a matter of adjustment. When the yantra, when the physical machine is not providing us with the service that we want, we can still apply the principle, but just by making adjustments and achieve the same result. There's one devotee who would chant his rounds walking around, and he broke his ankles. So for 2 years, or for some long time while his ankles were repairing, he couldn't chant, because he'd just been accustomed that when I chant I have to walk. But maybe in his mind he was able to chant. I think he still remained a devotee. If you don't chant your rounds, then it's going to be very difficult to remain fixed in this consciousness.
You're mentioning about the subtle form of Paramatma is the universal form, or something like that.
Yeah.
Please elaborate on this.
The universal form, the Virat Rupa, is an imaginary form. The soul of the universe, in order to create a blueprint, then all of those things are contained within it, the Virat Rupa, the universal form. And then, once you have a blueprint, then the gross manifestation can come. You can then create the universe. But everything comes from sound. Everything comes from the thought, the vision of the Krishna desired it and it manifested. For us, we have to then work. If we imagine something, we have to work on achieving it. But Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God, he's omnipotent, omniscient. He's aware. He's conscious of everything. So everything is there, present within his awareness. So that's the subtle, which means in the intelligence of the super soul.
And also you mentioned about the yogi, when he transfers after leaving the body at this particular will, then he transfers his body to one of the two planets, or but he absorbs the two elements within himself or something like that.
Yeah, the process of becoming free from the body. At the time of death, then the body is breaking down. So if in the normal practice, normal means slow, not mode of passion, you just start not functioning in the body. You start existing more in the mind or in the intelligence or in the soul. You start existing on a different level. So the body the elements start to break down. A yogi can do that without just the influence of the time factor. It's not that he's breaking down, but he can merge. He can. So that's the yogic process. You understand which is the order which the body has been created in, so you return it back. You can accelerate it. You merge the. I think it's came from subtle to gross, so it's from gross to subtle. The elements, and again, it's the subtle element of earth, which means the odor, which means the building block. You just start to wind that up. You stop functioning in that level, and then those elements, they merge back into the water, the watery elements, And then what happens is you're no longer functioning on that level, you're functioning on the level of the mind. So the mind fixed to Krishna and the intelligence fixed, you start operating that, and you just limit, you merge back in. And eventually, for instance, the result of the yogi Dhritarashtra, he was advised by Vidura that he should act as a renunciate, become a dhira, become wise. So he practiced like that, and then after 3 or 4 days, he was able to enter into fire. He built a funeral pyre, and he climbed into it. But he was no longer involved in the body. He was detached, so he could tolerate the heat of the body. And then his wife, who was attached to him, she also entered into the fire because she was attached and wanted to go where he was. And she felt the fire of separation to be greater than the heat of the fire. So that's not just an imagination. You actually experience that. You get to that level, that depths of understanding. Dealing with the elements. At the moment now it's cold. Oh, it's cold, what am I going to do? I'm wet, what am I going to do? It's raining in Calcutta, and people just, they get drenched. They go to work, they sit at their desks soaking wet. That's just life. You tolerate it. Whereas we're so namby-pamby and just, what's the word, mollycoddled, that we think we can't function. That's why fasting is sometimes good. If you're healthy enough, you can realise that if you don't eat, you won't die. It's a big realisation. I've got to eat. I've got to stuff my senses, my tongue. I'm the tongue. So when you perform some austerities, and the human form of life is meant for performing austerities, rather than acting like a hog or a dog. It's meant to perform. So you can experience that higher taste. Spiritual pleasure. It's not just something that just you imagine. Happiness. No, happiness and distress, they're fleeting. They come and they go. But real satisfaction, real spiritual pleasure, experience, comes by performing austerities. From limiting our activities on that external level. Using our senses to please Krishna. They're not functioning materially. And the example is given of an iron rod. The rod for poking the fire. It's dull, cold, metal, matter, gross matter. But if you put it in the fire and you fan the fire, after a while it takes on the qualities of the fire by association, and it becomes red hot and then white hot. And it's no longer dull metal. It's not matter. It's become spirit. It's become fire. So that's the way of purifying the senses, utilising the senses. For the yogi, they have to dismantle, withdraw, merge. But for the bhakti yogi, they utilise the senses in Krishna's service. You can get very excited about this subject matter. We just touched the surface. We're talking about tanmatras, the subtle essence of the senses. Then there's the jnana indriyas and the karma indriyas. There's said that there are 16 senses. We just talk about 5. There's 5. There's the sense objects, there's the subtle senses, there's the working senses, and the knowledge acquiring senses. And above all that is the mind. So who studies the mind? The mind is dependent upon the senses and the body. It's psychology, I guess. But the Western psychology is limited. Bhagavatam, full of all amazing information, knowledge. We'll finish there. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaur